Fernandez. I've got my partner, Francis Fernandez, her husband, Diego. I've got Barry Bruce here today. Thank you all for coming. And more importantly, I'm very proud to have my youngest sister. I have 5. We all grew up on Long Island, and that got scattered to the wind across the East Coast of the United States. But my sister Sheila, and she's my youngest sister, but I look up to her. And she has always made me proud, and I know her staff works very hard. They have an amazing system for making the world better for people that want to lose weight and be healthier up in Boston. And, I'll just leave it with, whenever I think I'm working hard and getting after it in my business and dialing down in what I do, I always think, what's Sheila doing? And I know that Sheila's working harder, and it gives me incentive to get back to work. So I love you, Sheila. And without further ado, for you and Mary Beth, take it away.
All right, thank you so much. That was a very, very kind introduction. John asked me to speak, obviously, and I thought instantly of Mary Beth because my friend and colleague has so eloquently put together in a book called My Hungry Head, sort of what I teach my patients on a daily basis. And then we've contracted with her, employed her, and now are running support groups for our pre and post weight loss surgery patients. But I think having sat through this course and understood it, I hope, I think there's so much to learn, no matter where you are. If you have 2 pounds you struggle with, and I think throughout our country and actually internationally, obesity, excess weight, overweight, and obesity is a pandemic. It is something that there's a lot of bias against, that we don't necessarily treat aggressively, but it is affecting most aspects of our health. But not to bring this group down, I want to lift us up and keep things happy. And I want to say, everybody likes to eat. Eating is it will always taste good, right? But restrictive dieting doesn't work. So I know a little bit about the biology, and your body's response to restrictive dieting is, and the difficulty in keeping weight off is just that. It's biology. It's not a lack of willpower. Or we would say that there's a pathological lack of willpower in 2 out of every 3 individuals in our country. I mean, that makes no sense, right? So genetics, environment, behavior. So your eating and exercise habits, whether your parents were overweight, the environment you live in, any solution to the obesity or overweight problem has to affect all of these areas. And there is an idea called a set point, and I'm not talking about tennis, but your body weight set point. And so your brain actually sets the number of calories you eat. It's important to understand, so I equate it to like the thermometer in your home, or no, sorry, more like your body temperature. You don't really get to decide if your temperature is 98 degrees or if you have a fever or you're hypothermic, your low body temperature. Your brain gets to decide, and short of taking on a coat or going outside or putting on an air conditioner, you get my point. Your thermostat is at a set point where the human body is supposed to live. Well, your muscle, your fat cells, your organs, your gut, certainly your brain, your emotions, your psychology can all influence. It's a very, very complex system that influences your body weight set point. And so, not to bore you with chemicals and hormones and medical terms, I'd like to introduce Mary Beth because I think, or I know that her mastery steps, and she can explain it a lot better than I can, clearly, you'll see. But the idea of trying to break out of the diet mentality, pushing that beach ball under the water that doesn't really get there, trying to change that set point when it has gone up and up and up, with trying to be good, skipping meals, all sorts of reasons why we do and don't eat and then regain weight after restrictive dieting is clearly delineated, understood, and sort of a good pattern of breaking out of that cycle or getting off that roller coaster is set forth. So Mary Beth, I'd love for you to introduce us to My Hungry Head and more about that.
Absolutely. Sheila, thank you so much. And John, thank you for having us. I think I'm the lucky one because in order to really help people and help people change their lives, I don't think there's any one program or magical book or set of steps or anything that's going to change. It takes really a village to help all of us become healthy. So I'm quite lucky that I get to work in a really wonderful village up in Boston with many of doctors and nutritionists and people who focus on medical weight loss as well as surgical weight loss and overall health. And Sheila leads the way in Newton Wellesley with partners. So it is exciting to work in this field. I've been working in this field for a while, for a couple of decades now, and I've learned one thing, painfully learned this with many of the patients, and Sheila and I have both seen thousands and thousands of patients, and people come to us pretty much with their soul destroyed from they're trying really hard and they're doing really well trying to get weight off. But as Sheila was saying, there's a set point, there's a biological piece that's trying to keep us where it wants to keep us. So the more we diet, the more we get into this tangled mess with the set point. But there's another piece to this that we have to help really all of us take a step back from, and that is the industry that helps promote some of the kind of eating that we think we should have control over. And I'm not talking about those amazing pancakes and crepes that you guys were talking about earlier. I mean, that's wonderful. That's amazing to go out and go to a restaurant and enjoy yourselves, right? There's nothing wrong with the kinds of foods that are around. It's the quantities and the accessibility of a lot of these foods and the way in which they're manufactured. So I thought I'd cover the bliss point and then tell you a little bit about how we work with these two parameters, because we're not gene therapists. We don't change people's genes, but we can work biologically and surgically and medically on people's set points. And there's this other piece called the bliss point. So there's two pieces of industry that I found very intriguing. One is the $64 billion weight loss industry. That's like a huge number. You guys are all business owners. And you know, like $64 billion industry is quite large. And that industry depends on us to fail. If we only go through, right, you got to think about it. It depends on everyone to fail. So they're really not looking at a holistic individual way in which you can take weight off and keep it off. And I'm not talking just 100 pounds. For many of us, it might be only 10 or 15 pounds, or it might be just changing sort of our body composition so that we're a little healthier and we can fight things like COVID a little better when we do get them. But the other piece of what's going on out there is the $3.03 trillion processed food industry. With, that annual growth number is old. That's a couple years old when I got that number, but that's like crazy amount of money. And this industry is making their money, and it's fine for them to do that. They are business owners. That's their thing. I have no problem with what they're doing from a capital standpoint. It's how we as individuals approach that and allow our interaction with those foods. So the bliss point was actually developed by, and I believe he's a Northeasterner as well out of MIT, but Howard Moskowitz is sort of coined this bliss point piece. And interestingly, he was a psychophysicist, and he came across bliss point when they were trying to figure out how to best construct food so that it tastes really good and you want more. Right? So there's a bliss point in all of us. We all have one. And, if you think about lemons, for example, if you take a bite of a lemon, you just get overwhelmed with your senses just get overwhelmed. It's like too much and you stop eating it. But if you did that with the first bite of Doritos or Lay's potato chips or Ben and Jerry's, how much would Ben and Jerry's really sell? right? How much would Lay's potato chips sell? So they want to create foods that are really amazing to taste, and they want you to have more, but don't necessarily create a sense of satiety in your head, right? And in the rest of your body. And generally those foods are convenient, they're in wrappers, they taste really good. They usually leave cheesy orange stuff on your fingers when you eat a bunch of them, right? And they're usually foods that once you start eating them, you can't stop. So knowing that this is the background, where we have a genetic piece, we have a biological piece, and we have this environmental piece, how do we actually help ourselves not get trapped into dieting? And I'm sure Dr. Partridge can attest to this, that dieting is what got most of our patients to the surgical table, not overeating. That was not the thing. It was constant dieting, gaining 10 pounds, losing 10, gaining 15, losing 15, gaining 20. So how do we stop all that, whether you're far down the track or you're just trying to become healthier overall? So over the period of about 14 or so years, maybe a dozen to 14 years, we started to notice patterns, what people do that get weight off and keep it off. And we studied that group of people, and we noticed that there were 6 things that they did remarkably well over time that helped them keep more weight off than someone who went on a diet or that maybe even had surgery and gained weight back. So one of the things that they did, and this is what we teach in the program, is to adjust the mind so that you're more of a detective for yourself. You have to figure out what works for you. And the first step that we do is working on facts. How do you create a neutral type of thinking? Very much like an accountant would be, a very kind of neutral. A lot of people journal, they use apps, they write down everything they eat or they put it in their app, but how much learning happens from that data collection? So we start to shift the mind from collecting data to learning from the data. We do not give food plans. What we do in our second step is we analyze the personal hunger cycle. Everyone has one. It all works kind of like the tide almost. But when your tide's out, someone else's tide's in. So you have to pay attention to your sort of tidal waves of hunger. So we learn about some of those hunger hormones and the satiety hormones and how they interact with your lifestyle. We do not give food plans. Everyone, you can go to any diet place and get a food plan. What you want is a plan that works for you. So it's how to develop your own based on your hunger cycle. We do cover mindful eating, and to try to figure out whether you're emotionally eating or physically eating, or emotionally hungry or physically hungry. But we do not launch into mindful eating immediately. And the reason for that is because the tools are wonderful. It's just that if you do not satisfy your biological needs of hunger, we can mindfully eat all you want, and it's not going to help. I mean, you can be mindful about eating your marshmallows, and that might not be getting you to the place that you want to get to. So we do incorporate mindful eating, but it's judicious as to when you use that, and you figure that out throughout the program that works for you. Then we launch into our fourth step, which is retraining the brain. There's a lot of biology and neurobiology that's going on within our bodies. And retraining that and finding those efficient key messages that you can tell yourself that calms down the kid part of you, the overcritical part of you, and the adult part of you. Because we don't want to go through life on a diet. Could you imagine not being able to eat those pancakes, right? Could you imagine not being able to go to a restaurant and enjoy that? So how can we retrain our brains so we release from the diet prison, enjoy food in a way that we can control ourselves and we don't make ourselves physically or emotionally sick? So that is our fourth step. The fifth part of the program is really generating new ideas and looking at what happens in between meals. So someone asked me, okay, well, after I eat, what do I do? You know, what happens? I'm like, that's sort of where life happens. Like, that's where you get the rest of your happy goals, right? You can't get them all from food. You can't get them all from the wrappers. But the people who are creating foods that have really manipulated bliss point factors, like they have an amazing combination of salt, sugar, and fat, those types of recipes can give us happy type chemicals. But they're not always that healthy for us long term. So we learn to generate more ideas. This is, our entrepreneurs love this type of session. This is like all the growth ideas, how to make things happen. But we have to do it in a way that makes sense for individuals. So there's no, here's 99 things you can do, that can distract you from eating. Distraction doesn't work, particularly for people who want to improve their health, because they're smart, they're together, they know what they want. So we have to work with discovering what is it that they really want that's going to increase the happiness, the satisfaction, the contentment within those periods between meals. And then the sixth part of our mindset is really elevating our problem solving techniques to trying to figure out what the right problem is that we're solving. A lot of people will come to me and say, I don't have time. And I'm like, well, that's so kind of not true, because we all have 24 hours, every one of us, we all have the same amount of time. There's no one that can escape the stress, particularly now, that's going on, trying to stay afloat amongst a pandemic. And money. Often people will say, well, I don't have the money to do these kind of, programs or this or that. Most people do. And the people who don't, I have worked with in rural areas of New England with people who live out of food pantries. And I've seen them do very, very well and become very healthy using these 6 steps and figuring out what works for them in a healthy, structured way. So these are the mindsets and the steps that we take people through and highlight what works for them. So you come out with a very individualized plan for yourself, and you learn the skills to create your own individual plans and tweak them over time so that you can live a life that has enjoyable foods in there, and you do things that you love to do, and you don't have to be on a diet because they're not fun. So that is our program in a nutshell. And if you have any questions or comments or thoughts for Dr. Partridge or myself, we'd be happy to entertain them.
Thank you. That was excellent.
That was a big download. Thank you for listening.
Yeah. No, and thank you, Mary Beth, for joining me to describe that, because I think you do it beautifully. And, most people don't need weight loss surgery, but we all need to take great care of our health. And this is just a good segue into that.
Yeah.
Well, how do you go about determining, I guess it's journaling. Is it collecting data? This is when I'm hungry, and this is when I'm not, and this is when I go nuts, and this is when I don't.
Yes, actually, those John, that's a really good question. And those are all the questions that are not on the apps. Apps are collecting pretty much your macronutrients, your carbs, your fats, your, some of your even micronutrients, some of your vitamins, but they're not really taking a look at the context, the timing of your eating, whether you're hungry, whether your energy is low, whether you're craving the food or it's just mindless. So there's some more information that you do have to collect for sure to get the whole picture and then start to figure out where to make your tweaks.
Got it.
Yeah, so the fish and broccoli test that I think I'm recalling from, if you're hungry and you'd eat some fish and some broccoli, then you're probably truly hungry. But if you're looking for a piece of chocolate and only the chocolate's going to satisfy it's probably a craving. So the energy level, the craving, those aspects of journaling and figuring out whether you're trigger foods and things like that. Maybe that's what can come out of being an objective observer.
So
that sounds right, Mary Beth?
Perfect.
It sounds like there's a really nice blend here of finding out what works for you. Like, for instance,
we just got a hot.
Hold on. I'll mute Anne-Marie there.
Yeah, we have a tornado notice over here.
Oh, do you? Okay.
Yeah.
I really like this because everybody's different. Like, for instance, I tend to do much better on a low carb diet. I feel better. My body reacts better to it. If I'm staying kind of low carb, don't misunderstand me. I love my Italian food. I love my pancakes. I love snacks that are crunchy, and I just have to be really mindful about how much I eat those, because I never feel very, I always regret it later. And but I really like to eat like everybody does, and I tend to be kind of a yo-yo guy.
We might have lost
Where
Kurt for a minute.
I get serious about my low carb, and
Mary Beth, I have a question for you.
Sure.
I have been doing something a little bit different in that, like, I am eating, I'm eating well, eating healthy, but I don't snack.
Mhm.
What is the, I mean, I try not to snack, especially even if it's an apple in between meals, I try not to. So what is the current thought process on snacking, even if it's healthy snacks?
Right. I'll give you the My Hungry Head and our version of what is right. You do what's right for you. So if you are white knuckling it between meals and you are really, really hungry, but you're just like, oh my God.
Hold on a second.
Yeah.
Oh, we're good. We're good.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you're white knuckling it between meals and it's really difficult to get to that next meal and you just wish that you could have a snack, you may just be having a little bit of an energy dip and you might just want to have something. Eating Well magazine has really wonderful combinations of healthy snacks, but usually if you put together a protein and add a protein into a typical snack, like maybe even like sliced turkey around a pretzel or something, that might be enough to get you through, or that apple might be able, enough to get you through. No one that I've ever met in my, 9,000 patients that I've worked with has ever gained too much weight from eating apples, ever. That has never been the problem. So some people do not need to snack. They're totally fine with their 3 meals a day. Our philosophy is if you want to have a small, reasonable, and I'm talking reasonable planned snack, you can do that if you want to or you need to.
Okay.
So you do have that other opportunity because some people just can't get through the 4-hour sort of period of waiting for the next meal.
So give us an idea of a couple really healthy snacks with protein for in between meals with protein.
Yeah. Well, I would give you that website, Eating Well, but I love turkey and cheese and ham roll-ups. That is a thing for me. I will give you the formula that I think works. Protein, whatever protein you might like. Do something with flavor and do something with crunch, if that's what you really like.
Okay.
So if you're gonna have a little bit of cheese, I'd throw some watermelon in there that still is kind of flavorful and crunchy, and I'd throw some balsamic vinegar on that, or maybe some mint. So I'd always look at that sort of combination of protein with a little crunch and flavor. So do your flavor profile. If you're a spicy person, you may want to do some, a cheese with some pepper, because you're gonna hit different chemicals throughout your neurochemistry set. Like spicy peppers might bump up your endorphins a little bit, right? So you do what makes sense for you. Crunch, protein, flavor.
Good.
So I was
Thank
on a networking event recently, and the person who led it wrote a book, and essentially the theme of the book was "You bite, you write." So she was like, every single thing you eat, if it's 2 M&Ms, you need to journal it so that you can actually be realistic about what you are putting in yourself.
Yeah, I think that's a really great start in terms of accountability and being honest. I mean, that's where our program starts, is being honest with yourself and what you're putting in your body. And then if you can elevate that to learning what that is doing to you or for you. So in my book, we have one patient who did exactly that. She was amazing. And she'd come into my office and she'd open her pocketbook up and she'd have 8,000 vitamins, whatever Dr. Oz said to take, she took. And she'd have gummy bears, and I'm like, tons of gummy bears. And she wrote in every gummy bear she ate, but she ate a lot of them, and a lot of skinny girl vodka with Crystal Light. You know what I mean? So she calculated it, but she still wasn't really feeling good. So I would just layer on that. I think that's an amazing start. I'd layer on that how and what is it doing for your body?
And the important part to add to that is what are you learning from it, and to really know that one size doesn't fit all. Like, so any diet, you know, the diet that works for you, that we're trying to break out of this mentality, but the one that works for you is the one you stick to. So it's more of a healthy eating, learning what your biology, your body needs to be satisfied.
Yeah. I want to thank you very much for this very interesting presentation that you gave, and I took lots of notes actually, and I would like to ask if you agree on what I'm going to say, because I was raised in Paris, France, and the lifestyle and the environment to me looks like it's very important, very important. When I came to the US, I was really amazed to see how people ate differently, and also the taste was different. There was sugar in everything, even in ham, there is sugar. Mm-hmm. And so, you know, in France, people drink wine, they eat 4-course meal, they eat very rich food, they eat lots of fat, butter, but they eat smaller portions. Mm-hmm. And also one thing I noticed is that people walk a lot in France. In the US, people drive everywhere. There is, you know, it's really a civilization that's very different. And also people cook. And you are talking about, you know, people eating lots of processed food in the US. In France, most people know how to cook. So we cook, you know, our own meals. I really believe that it can make a big difference. And I had a very interesting discussion with Scott, who is here on the Zoom today. And he told me something that I didn't think about. He said that when he visited France, he noticed that the produce, the meat, everything tasted better, so that people don't have to eat as much, because it's more agricultural. And we live in the US, which is a very industrialized society. So there is a lot of, you know, it's two very different society. And I really believe that it does impact the way people eat, but also what they eat, you know, the primary ingredients. Yeah.
Yeah, I would echo that. If I could live in France, I definitely would do that. But I think there is a way that we can have, you know, based on what you're talking about, like a French style, we could do more of that. And part of that beginning is, or starting that is thinking about what is in our food and what are we buying, what are we putting in to ourselves. So figuring out that bliss point, not being manipulated by it, because salt, sugar, fat combinations sell in the United States. Obviously, it's a big industry. So that's where we start this program with, and then help people to sort of guide into that. Hopefully, I would love for all of our patients to cook for themselves. I think Dr. Partridge would as well, but unfortunately, it's not always in our culture, but there are other ways around that, and we just have to be clever, generate more ideas, and start to solve some of the real problems.
I have a question. I don't know if this is a myth or if it's fact. Does your blood type have anything to do how you process carbs and fatty foods and what you eat, whether you exercise or not? Is a blood type a factor of your set weight and the cap of that? I mean, does it have anything to do with it at all? Because I was reading something that they said that it depends on your blood type on how you process foods and how you can get rid of the fat and burn it faster or slower. Is that true?
I'll dive in there and say that's a data-free zone. There's no evidence that that's true.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
That is a very popular program out there, and it sells quite well. And even if it was true, again, I'm with Dr. Partridge on that. I haven't seen any data either. However, even if it was true, I don't think it would make a difference. I think you can make more difference in sort of the quantities in which we eat and the quality of the foods we eat. And without even knowing what our blood types are, we can make a difference.
Okay, thank you very much.
Do you go to organic? Have you moved over to organic, or go to farmers markets and those kinds of things? Generally, is that sort of a thing that just over time you have learned it's worth the extra money you pay or whatever?
And Dr. Partridge, have you switched over?
you know, we don't make a big recommendation to our patients, but in higher fiber diet is important. And also, I think if you want to spend, you know, the best bang for your buck is to go organic in foods where you eat the peel, like apples, but not bananas because you peel it off. So unless there's a real scare for pesticides or you're susceptible to a certain aspect of, you know, things we learn about with farming and whatnot, the benefit of organic is really not tremendous. Or like I said, if you're ingesting a lot of the outside of something like a apple versus a banana, that might be where it makes sense. How about you, Mary Beth? It's that this is not something that we're too, you know, educational on.
You know, it's a transitionary thing. If someone doesn't even eat fruit or vegetables, if they just, I don't actually care where they get their fruit or vegetables.
Right.
You know, frozen vegetables are perfectly fine. So we start where we start, wherever the patients are, and you have to start there. If someone chooses to go all organic and that's what they want to do, that is totally fine. But maybe if someone's eating lots of berries and the apples, like Dr. Partridge is saying, that probably is, you know, a nice place to start if that's what they want to do. But I think people can improve their health dramatically just adding in the fiber-rich foods.
Yeah. And then the thing with vegetables is frozen vegetables are pretty much flash frozen when they're produced or when they're packaged. So you'll get the same vitamins and nutrients, and probably better than canned, which have a lot more sodium in it. But even then, our dietitians will fully, you know, support a patient who can't afford fresh vegetables or even frozen and have a can of something from a pantry or food pantry. And that if that's how you're getting your vegetables, well, you can still be as healthy as you can, and that's okay.
Yeah. The overall sense is get the, no pun intended here, right? But go after the low-hanging fruit, right? Go for your big hits and get some of the big hits in order, and then you can start fine-tuning along the way.
I have heard actually several dietitians say that we should definitely eat organic meat, because they were telling me that because of the antibiotics that you find in the meat and, you know, whatever the animal eats, they say definitely go organic for the meat. And just because of the thing that we will, you know, the antibiotics and other things, but it's much more expensive. So what is your take on that?
You want, no? I think it's the same. I think you have to be careful with labels. Some, you know, organic means something. Organic means they didn't use certain pesticides. So how is that going to affect meat? Right? So if you're looking to be antibiotic free or hormone free, so I think really pay attention to the labels that you're reading. What do they mean? If someone says, oh, you know, I bought this cheese and it's all natural. Well, who would eat unnatural cheese? Like, that's weird, right? But yet marketing plays a very clever part in directing us here, and sometimes directing the conferences and things that other professionals come up with. So again, I think it's, what is your goal? What are you trying to achieve from a health perspective? What are you willing to do? How many, you know, how much funds can you put into something like this? And then we work with what you have to get you to be the healthiest and optimize what you have in the health that you're going after.
Well, it's 4:49, so 4:50, you know, 4:59, I should say. So we really only have about a minute to go. I wanted for everybody to give, you know, a virtual round of applause. These are our guests did a wonderful job. I did record it, so I will be putting up on my YouTube page soon. I want to thank John for his work in pulling this together today, and all our guests who took their time, their valuable time to jump on. And if you have not put your contact information in the chat box, please, please, please do that, because I do send a follow-up email and send the chat out to everybody so you guys can contact each other. And please, Dr. Partridge or Mary Beth, or if you want to give us a way to contact you. Of course, we're looking at things right here on the photo graphic, but you know, this is a networking group, and we like to try to help each other any way we can.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mary.
Thank you. That was,
Sheila.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you, John, for having us, and Kurt.
Thank you so much.
yeah,